cannot invent and pioneer if you cannot accept failure.
We wanted people that were insanely great at what they did.
Nobody was making any money at all. Most people thought the internet was going to be a fad.
All right. On the podcast in the Second Timer Club, we're bringing back somebody that you and I feel like maybe I'm stalking you on Twitter, but I feel like I'm loving what you do on Twitter. But we got John back on the podcast. You are on episode 86, which if people want to go back and see your story, it's pretty cool. But dude, I'm fired up to get into it today.
Yeah, man, this is gonna be awesome. Thanks for having me back on. It's been year and a half that we've been connected. It was probably 12 months ago I was on the pod the first time. So yeah, stoked to be back, man.
Yeah, it's like almost a year actually. And
yeah,
so
lots happened.
And what's funny is like we both have companies that we've been doing for a little while, and then we're like, you know what? We have shiny object syndrome. Let's launch something else. And we both have launched these other companies, and like you and I at a cocktail party, we could talk to people and make them think it's going real well and talk about like how it's just crushing it. But as you and I compare notes, like we're like, man, do we have product market fit? Is this working? And you and I were kind of chatting, having a very honest conversation. And I was like, hey, why don't we hit record and put this out there? Because it's so like easy to see the narrative of, oh, you have a startup idea, you launch it, you work hard, and then boom, IPO. But the messy middle is real messy. And knowing if you have product market fit or not, it's not super binary sometimes. It's like, it's very gray. It's very muddy. And so that's kind of what we wanted to hit on today.
And I heard someone talking yesterday about how it's a constant search. So like it might be working, like you might get to, and I think we should define product market fit, but you might get to a place where you're like, all right, this thing is growing. We've got our offer nailed. We know who our customer is. We have our acquisition channels going, and like everything is going. Everything's up and to the right. It's great. And then the market shifts or the economy shifts. And then all of a sudden you don't have product market fit anymore because you were like, growing really well in an economy where everybody is super, optimistic and all of that. And people are like just trying to hire as fast as they can. And then the economy shifts and all of a sudden, like they're losing all their budget. What do you do then? Like all of a sudden your approach has to change, your messaging has to change, all of that. So I think it's like it's never a destination. If we think about it as a destination, I think we're not gonna do as well versus like I heard Alex Hormozy say like, and I don't know who he got it from, but basically the person that enjoys walking is going to go way further than the person that's trying to get to the destination. So I think like we have to learn to enjoy the roller coaster to really enjoy walking and to keep on walking.
That's such a good point that it's not just some state that you hit. It's, you're always kind of working to ensure you have it because it can ebb and flow, like the level of traction that you have. But you said a good thing, like let's define product market fit. So I decided to cheat and I went to ChatGPT to see like, okay, what's the definition of product market fit? And so let's compare. So according to Mark Andreessen, product market fit means being in a good market with a product that can satisfy that market. Okay, there you go. Brian Belfour, he says it in a way that aligns with what you just said, where product market fit isn't a one-time discrete point in time that announces you've made it. So many things change that maintaining fit is just as hard, if not harder, as finding it initially. What do you think of when you think of like the definition of product market fit?
Yeah, so I mean, different people have said obviously different things. I don't disagree with Mark Andreessen. I do think there is like a bit of a feeling around like if you have like fit or not, basically like are more people coming in who need what you offer, and then what you offer is attractive enough to them that they sign up and they stick around. That's the long-winded version. HubSpot says that for them, it's if at least 40% of your customers say they would be very disappointed if they no longer had access or consider it a quote unquote must-have, you've created a product that fits into the market. I do think there is a growth element though, that like if you're getting people, there are people that are coming to you that need the thing that you have, not just your existing customers have it. So you figured out some like acquisition channels and all of that. You figured out your acquisition, your sales, your delivery, like all of those things, your retention, all those things have to be in line. So
Yeah, I like what you said with the HubSpot definition of like the 40% rule, that the product went away, over 40% would be very disappointed to not have it. And like, I think of it as like at our growth agency, whenever we're looking at clients, like I look at their conversion rate for e-commerce companies, like, oh, do they have traction? It's like, oh, wow, their conversion rate's 4%. That's amazing. Or if it's a SaaS company, they have like negative churn or no churn. Because a lot of people are like, wait, how do you like quantify it? Which is, there isn't like a true definition, but those are some metrics I look at as signals that, oh, wow, this is working, or it's very viral and that there's a lot of referrals or word of mouth or high NPS score. Those are other ways to try and like quantify product market fit.
Even like thinking about like sales metrics, where like if you're converting 100% of people that come to you, you probably don't have product market fit, because it probably means that your price is so low that like people are just willing to take a flyer on it and they're hoping. So I actually look at like a healthy business is closing probably 60% of like qualified deals that they pitch, because it means that there's competition in the space. People are willing to sign on. Your pricing is high enough. All of those things. And it's probably a little bit longer of a sales cycle. So there's that side. And then, if it's like self-serve SaaS or something like that, then like a certain like percentage of like free to pay, free trial to paid, conversion, like that kind of thing. And then there's the retention metrics, as well, because if you're signing on 100% of people and they're all churning out after a month, you don't have product market fit. And that's where I found myself recently, versus like, if you're not everyone churning, but like more than should be, versus like if you're signing on 60% of people and they're all sticking for 6 months, 12 months, or they're willing to sign that longer contract and they actually like pay it out, and they've gotten good results and they re-up, you have fit there, so I think that's the hard thing about this, is like there are many, many layers to it, and you're kind of knocking down the dominoes of acquisition, sales, retention, continuation. Like all of those things, I say, have to fit, have to be there before you can really say that you have fit.
You said something that stung because it hit way too close to home. It's like the prices are so low, they'll take a flyer on you, where you get this false sense of like, oh my gosh, I'm closing everything. Because like with One Day Design, we've been testing like one landing page at $12.99, and a lot of people will kind of say that like, cool, I'll take a flyer on that because that's so approachable. But now you're making me rethink, and we can get into pricing, because the value exchange is so freaking hard, and like trying to nail that. One thing I also want to hit on is, what are some false signs of product market fit? You listed a few, because that's one thing Paul Graham talks about. It's like, you can always feel it when it's not happening, but you think it is. It's like the next deal's about to close. The next partnership is just another meeting away. Because I was a part of a startup that was in this false sense of product market fit for like 18 months, where you're just like one thing away. But the truth is, it's not happening. And then I was at another startup where it's working because you can't hire people fast enough. All of a sudden, everybody knows about the product and the company, and you have real growing pains as opposed to traction gains. And I think you need to be in both seats to really know that difference.
What do you mean by growing pains instead of just traction gains?
Yeah, it's like,
what's the difference?
You like can't fulfill all the needs, as far as like, you don't have enough people to actually like. This was like a media company where they like, all the advertisers are like, oh, you guys need to launch this product in Dallas and then Austin. And it's like, well, we don't have people to fulfill that yet. And so you're really having to just like build the operations to go where the demand is.
Right. Yep. Yeah. And I've seen that in businesses. Like I was talking to someone who was early on at Design Pickle, that basically like they've never had a lack of demand, and then basically they've just had to bring in great like ops people and all of that, and like people that can just like constantly be hiring, vetting, retaining designers, like that kind of thing. They've just always had like strong demand, and to me that's the sign of like, and they launched 8 years ago, and like there was no one else in this space, right? It's much harder for like kind of the follow-ons, the super sides, etc. It's been harder for them to get traction just because like Design Pickle has kind of gobbled it all up from the start, right? But that to me is like, okay, you're running to keep up with demand as opposed to trying to like generate demand. Like,
Right. Yeah.
so I think so that like you're not having to generate demand and you're just like, people are just coming to you and you can't sign them fast enough and they're your ideal customer and they're getting the value, all of that. Like that's product market fit there.
Yeah, it's funny. A buddy of mine who has an agency and then he just launched a SaaS company that's doing pretty well. He's like, I literally didn't know what product market fit was because as an agency, I'm like forcing this down people's throat, like buy my service. And then he's like, with the SaaS, he's like, people are just signing up automatically and they're asking for new features. And he's like, I never saw that. But
yeah.
But dude, so we can kind of like, let's start with Editor Ninja. And
sure,
like, or we can start with mine, whichever direction you want to go. I'd love to kind of like almost like a linear path of like how it's going, how it's gone, and where you're at as you're in this kind of messy middle.
Yeah, it might be helpful to like kind of just give an update, like each of us give an update on kind of where, like what our business is and where we currently are. So for Editor Ninja, we are a subscription content editing service. So we're basically the design pickle of content editing. We primarily focus on copy editing and proofreading. So we're in the low five figures of monthly revenue. It's basically all MRR, even though we're an agency, we're a productized service, which means we just have a technology layer that delivers the service in a consistent way. So our customers are basically agencies, content agencies, and also in-house like content and SEO teams that are mainly producing marketing content. So the reason why like I've been thinking about product market fit is that we recently expanded, or a while ago, started this year, we raised our prices and started offering basically more like in-depth sort of like editing. And what we realized was basically my hypothesis was that we could deliver that like in-depth, like developmental editing that goes back to the writer, et cetera, in the way that we deliver copy editing and proofreading. And basically what I learned is, at least in the marketing space, at least the customers we've been going after, basically they're not sending it back to the writer for like in-depth feedback. They're not investing in their writers to make them better. They're basically like, we get what we get from the writer and then we rely on someone else, AKA an editor, to make it good and to make it ready to go. But that usually involves someone with marketing experience and all of that. So, I was seeing that like our price point, because basically the alternative to like hiring us to, developmentally edit, AKA provide feedback and rip it apart to send back to the writer for them to do a second draft. And then it comes back to us. Our price point, I mean, basically it was like, pay us $1,000 a month or go and spend 3-4 months hiring an editor that you're going to pay $75,000 to $80,000 a year. Right. So the price was low enough that people were willing to take a flyer on it, but it was just impossible to deliver in the way that they wanted. Everyone wanted something different. Right. So like part of it was that I wasn't qualifying well enough within the sales process for like what their process is. And people were willing to sign on, even though it wasn't quite the right thing because the price was low enough. So I can sign them on and then they would churn. And it was frustrating as anything.
Yeah, because especially with the productized service, because when you're making a productized service, you want to make a specific product that is repeatable and scalable that goes to this audience. And the issue that I run into as well is people want customized things, but that kind of defeats the purpose of having this low price productized offering. Because I would struggle with, are they right and I need to change the product, or they're actually the wrong customer for what we have and the product is right? And I really struggle with that, but it sounds like you've done a good job. You're honing in on agencies, like, and you're saying like what you're selling, they like it, but they want more. And is that why they're churning?
Yeah, basically. And we don't have the like, what they also like what they're willing to pay for a service as opposed to like a full-time person. We can't deliver the service that they want for that. We can't hire the people that they want for that. So it's actually a better fit for them to go and, kind of hire on their own, even though it's going to be more expensive. It's like, it's a funny, like psychological thing there. But what I've done, Jim, is I have a spreadsheet here that is like, I'm a spreadsheet junkie. That's basically like, what are all of our deals that are like in process, that have churned, that are currently signed on, like that kind of thing. I've qualified them, working to close them, whatever. And then I have them all categorized by like, what kind of business are they? Like agency, brand, freelancer. Have they signed on? Like yes, no, not yet. Did they churn? Yes, no. why did they churn or why did they not sign on? And so I'm seeing sales objections that have kept them from signing on. And I'm also seeing why they churned. And then I can slice it by the type of company, that the type of business that they are. And what I realized actually for my business, and it's going to be different for other people, for my business, it's not about whether they're an agency, a freelancer, or an in-house team. It's how are they thinking about content and how are they producing it? Are they running like a specific like editorial process, or are they just like kind of winging it and trying to, scale it up and, trying to rely on 2 people when they should have like 4 different people doing it? It's really like how they're thinking about content and how they're producing it, their process, and whether that fits the way that our process works.
That's such a good point, because like with this idea of product market fit, like the market can be, you really need to know the ins and outs of it. It's not just agencies, it's not just an in-house content team. It's like a team with X amount of people that actually has a workflow or a system that does this. Then you're magic for them. But if they don't have it, they're not going to see the value in it. So like,
you got it.
So basically, I think, because you're doing such a good job you're doing a better job than I am of documenting it, to be honest. Ours is a little bit more of gut feel. Like, how do you get those qualifiers? Is it just doing constant calls with people to figure that out?
Which qualifiers? Like why they didn't sign on or why they churned?
Exactly. Or basically the difference between a customer that loves you versus someone that churns, how you're uncovering like what makes it work and doesn't make it work. Is it from, because sometimes it's hard to get that feedback when they churn. And then you said you're addressing those objections in the sales process. Is it just constantly talking to people, or are you doing lots of follow-ups?
I do a lot of follow-ups in the sales process, as anyone should if they're actively doing sales for any business, right? Like, people will go cold, they'll go on vacation, whatever. Like, you have to be following up. And I have a very good, I have a CRM, but also, I also use Gmail's Boomerang to bring stuff back to me to remind me, right? If I say that I'm going to follow up in 2 weeks, I send that email and then I set that email to come back to my inbox in 2 weeks. It's just like, that's my process and it keeps me following up. So as far as like getting the reasons why people churn, people are going to hate me for this. I actually removed the ability for people to cancel. They have to submit a cancellation request, and then tell us why they want to cancel. And then I will follow up. I've never not allowed someone to cancel, but it's so that I can get that in-depth feedback, right? What was it? And even try to save them. Like I say, I've saved a couple because they were like, oh, we're not getting X and Y. And so I'm still having to do this. And I'm like, well, you didn't tell us you needed that. We can do that. Right. And then we do it. And then they stay on and they're super happy. It's like, you got to give us a shot, And that's kind of taking into account that there's always going to be like a 10% or like a couple specific things that they need to do, which is why any productized service that reaches, or any just like agency that reaches any level of scale, there's a specific person assigned to that account that gets to know that account. And we actually create documents about each of our customers, who they are, who the main point of contact is, what kind of business they are, what's unique about this project. And then myself, our managing editor, and any editor working on that project, on that account, also has access to that. So we have a shared document about them internally, that anything that is new that's learned, whether specific things this customer needs, like that kind of thing, is all within that. So it doesn't go outside of we're not going to go and be in their Slack and work within their systems and all that sort of stuff. It all happens in our system. That's the productized part. But there are always going to be, little unique things, like they're looking for this, or they need to, an intro paragraph shouldn't be longer than 2 sentences or something like that. We allow for that because we have people that get to know their accounts. So that's helped. And then basically I take the reasons why they churn. And then I basically make a determination, kind of a value judgment of is this something that we should have been able to keep? Is this something that we've heard many times and multiple times that we actually need to serve? Or is this just that we're never going to do that, or we're not going to do that anytime soon? Never say never, right? We're not going to do that anytime soon. And so I actually need to qualify for that in the sales process with future prospects to make sure that they're not expecting X, and just be very, very clear about what it is that they're looking for. So it feeds back in to the sales process as well.
Oh man, that's such a good framework. And especially yes, people want to be able to churn automatically, but the feedback that you're getting from that is huge, and you can eventually help them if they're the right fit. Question for you, because
they still get to churn. right? We're not holding them hostage. Like,
yeah,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no problem. Sorry to see you go. Can you give me some feedback on, what you didn't get? And like I have found I have not had anyone not be happy to do that.
yeah. No, and that's traditionally how clients churn with agencies too. So it makes sense. So here's the big question. How often are you tweaking your product, your offering, or your pricing based on this feedback? Because I'm interested to compare notes on like how often you guys do that versus how often we're doing it.
How many hours are in the day? I'm kidding. I would say like I am making some sort of tweak weekly.
Yeah.
So
same here,
bigger,
man.
Bigger pricing changes and all that sort of stuff. Like those happen less often, probably monthly, every couple months, something like that. But like moving stuff in and out of packages and all that sort of thing, like that's happening weekly, kind of adjusting to the market. So yeah. What about you?
And I mean, we're the same. And like, we actually have an updated design for a website we haven't pushed because I'm still trying to solidify pricing. And because I get on a call with everybody and we literally have 5 different slides where based on the persona, we're testing different packages and pricing. So like our process has been kind of similar where it's, we had this initial offer of $12.99 and we were closing a lot of things. And I think we got like a false sense of hope and we had an unlimited package, but literally only like 2 or 3 people did that. And one of them, they did it so well after they got like 50 of the designs for us. They're like, we literally have nothing else for you to design and we're going to churn. And we're like, crap, like we were too unlimited. And they were a machine. So what we've seen is like we have those 2 offerings, but what started to happen was people would put us as just another design option, almost like comparative to Design Pickle. And then it's a little bit of a race to the bottom on pricing. And so we had to really focus on our point of differentiation, which is conversion rate optimization, CRO focused design. So as we leaned into that, we were winning some deals. However, then people are comparing us to like CRO agencies and they want heat maps, scroll maps, session recordings, and the data with it. So we're trying to really hone in on, okay, what's our point of differentiation and what do people want? So some clients are like, just give me the CRO focused landing page design. Some people are like, I just want the data. Some people want both. And so what we've done is we've created a database of, and we're going very aggressive after Shopify and e-commerce. We have a database of like 10,000 Shopify sites where we basically put them in categories by MRR and we're going after them and we're just trying to talk to them to see what they want. So I can eventually hone in on those packages. And so it's like, we did like 15 calls in 6 days and we got all different types of answers, but we're categorizing it by their price point or by how much money they make each month. Because here's what I realized. We were closing a lot of small companies that would use us as one and done design things to get their website up. And that was, I guess, good for quick closes. But here's the thing. If I have to get to $1 million closing a lot of things as one-time hits of $12.99, I'm going to pass out. I want recurring revenue. I care about MRR. And so I was like, this is not sustainable. So I was like, we do not have traction. We do not have product market fit because MRR isn't working. So the whole shift is figuring out how do we get those clients that we can help on an ongoing basis. So that's what we're hunting for.
When it goes back to like, who are the people that are doing it like consistently, and then how does their workflow work for producing it? And then therefore, what does your offer look like? So for us, for example, there are 2 ways that people produce content we have found. One is, and I've dug into this a lot over the last like 3 weeks or so. One is they're producing it ongoing. Usually it's like a content, in-house content team that they're like, we're publishing 3 pieces a week, right? And they have a specific cadence. Yeah. Some agencies do that as well. And they're just always working along. But what I've also found is that there are agencies, and I haven't found in-house teams that do this. And freelancers kind of work ongoing, right? But they're a risk because like they're working with 3, 4, maybe 5 clients. And we had 2 like great freelance customers who are awesome that we were delivering great value for that churned because they both lost 2 or 3 clients in a week So they no
Oh,
longer
yeah.
had the need for us because they were hiring us to buy back their time so they could bring on more clients. All of a sudden they don't need us because they don't have the clients and they churn or
Yeah.
pause. I expect both of them to come back, but the other thing for us is like just learning the process is like, I heard one agency say, we order our content at the start of the week. And I'm like, that's interesting. You order your content. Tell me more about that. And they're like,
Yeah.
well, we do the strategy at the end of the month. We order all the content at the start of the month for that month. And then it comes back by the middle of the month and we need it all edited in the back half. What? So like our document per day model doesn't really work for them. They actually care more about like, did we get it all back within those 2 weeks? And if they're not using it for 2 weeks when the content's being written, they feel like psychologically, they feel like they're wasting money. So you even have people say like, I'm going to sign up and then I'm going to churn, then I'm going to sign up and then I'm going to churn. I'm like, you can also do that, but just so you know, our prices change all the time. And so if you cancel and then come back on, you're paying the higher price. Right. And so like that helped some, but basically what I've done is I actually have an option for people now where they can buy a bundle of words, just like a balance of words. And on that one, it's a 2 business day SLA on documents. And we do have like up to like 4 documents like being worked on at any concurrent time, because I'm also then incentivized to help them burn through their words.
Totally.
So then they buy more, but that works for them. Like the 2-day SLA on all documents is great because they're not like, I'm uploading 10 and some of those aren't going to come back for 2 weeks. Like I'm uploading 10 and at most it's going to take like 3 days, right? 4 days for it to come back on this. Like, we do kind of like pace it. So just for like internal, like capacity, issues at this point. But like I had to adjust the way I let them buy and basically say like, do you produce content this way or this way? Okay. You produce it the second way. Great. This is the way that you should buy. And that's made it much smoother.
Isn't that funny? It's just understanding the language they speak so your product aligns with it, because those little nuances can have a huge impact, right? As far as, we don't need it every month. We need it this way. And you're still getting like the recurring business. It's not true. It's not like a monthly subscription, but they're going to be re-upping. And the thing that's nice is you're doing it based on usage, right? Is what we care about as well, just to protect your margins and everything.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And that also doesn't preclude us from like, or if someone comes in and they're like, hey, we need 10 designs, right? 10 options for this like landing page or whatever. You can also just sell it to them as a bundle. You don't have to get them into like a monthly thing that then they churn. You're like, all right, cool. You need 10. And, and basically like they basically pay a tax on like not doing the ongoing, not having the ongoing. It's like, it's $12.99 for a page. If you're constantly getting us to create pages, right?
Yeah.
But you only have a need for 10. So then it's like whatever, 1,500 or whatever. And you can like kind of custom quote them that way. But you can still deliver it in the same way, using the same designers, et cetera.
No, I love that, because you're exactly right. Because when we would do the unlimited a month, they're like, well, wait, what does unlimited mean? And some months are different than others. And it was just like, how a sales call goes where it's going well, then all of a sudden you confuse them. You're like, I wish I would not have even put that package out in front of them.
Gosh.
So, we, one thing, a buddy of mine, he was saying, this is what you need to do, man. And I've been testing a little bit. I'm a little hesitant. He's like, you need to be the Costco for CRO, where it's low monthly or quarterly fees just to get like your CRO analysis and roadmap. And then when they need design or dev, that's the variable component. But if they feel that they always have you in their back pocket when they need you, you'll be the go-to option. And so that's something that's interesting, where it's like, should it be like $749 a month? Should it be $79 a month? Like, what do you get? But just to be on the hook, so you have some recurring component. But I agree with you, man. It's like sometimes the MRR doesn't work. It's more of the usage and letting them always re-up.
Right. And I know, like, I hear that. And I've also like thought about that myself. And I know some companies some productized services that run that model, where basically they try to teach their customers that it's like, it's not necessarily about the output that they're getting, but it's having the access to the output when they need it, which works really well in a booming economy. I think it's different now in like the current economy that we're in.
Yeah.
And also those businesses that do that, I know their churn is crazy,
Mhm.
like double digits a month of churn. They just have enough inbound that they're able to
Yeah.
replace it, but they also hit like a ceiling. So pluses and minuses, man, pluses and minuses.
Yeah. The other thing, so there, do you know who David C. Baker is? He's like the consultant's consultant. He wrote the book, the Art of Expertise, and he basically says to have a product or to have like a productized service or an agency, you literally don't need a list that's bigger than 2,000 people. As long as you have 2,000 leads, you can have an amazing business. And he's like, you can buy a list of 2,000 leads. And I think about that because I think a lot of times I'm guilty of going too broad and not focusing enough. Because like we made the decision to focus just on Shopify and e-commerce. We're thinking like, do we go even more focused within that, especially in the early days? Because there's something magical when you know the customer so well and you're so focused that when they see your product, it's just a no-brainer. Have you, because you're honing in, is there something that you're like, oh wow, if we just focus on that niche or category, I would knock it out of the park? Or are you not at that point yet? Because that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this. I think we're getting close. I think you are too. It sounds like if you're just doing like Shopify, right? And if you can figure out how to get in front of the ones, and maybe it's not like individual Shopify store owners, or maybe it is Shopify store owners that are doing over 5 million a year, and they have like a person that's in charge of like design and testing or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So there's these like qualifiers. It's like they are this, and they also have this person, and they also do this, and they also do this, and then boom, that's who you're going for, right?
Right. Yeah.
Or it is maybe it's agencies, it's Shopify agencies that are always producing like, they're creating websites and they're creating custom Shopify sites, right? And their customers are Shopify stores doing 2 mil plus a year or something like that, right?
Yeah.
But they work in this way, right? I think it's a lot more the process and not the person necessarily.
By the way, I just want to, I love that you're talking about like finding the right process that you fit into, because with what we do, that's really what it is. That's the product market fit. And I haven't thought of it that way. So good call. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah. We're like, at Editor Ninja, I mean, you're part of you're one step in the development process or one step in like the conversion optimization process, right? So like people shouldn't be comparing you to their conversion agency. They should be hiring a conversion agency that uses you.
Right. Yeah.
So like for Editor Ninja, we're like the last 2-3 steps of the content creation process, right? We're not owning the full thing. Then we'd be a content agency. And then people would be asking us for a bunch of other things as well. So yeah, it's but I've been doing a lot of like research and looking into like, how do we identify, like, okay, if we're going to go after content agencies that are producing at least 30 pieces of content a month for their clients, and they've been doing that consistently, what does that look like? Like how big is an agency that is consistently producing at least 30, 40 pieces of content a month for their clients? How many clients do they have, right?
Yeah.
What does their internal structure look like? And then, what does their process look like? And so once I'm back from this upcoming trip, I think we're spinning up more like Google ads and such, but that's more like just like straight keyword focus. And then there's more like qualification about like, are they the right kind of business? Are they, their volume, blah, 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 like all of those things. And some of that on the forum, some of that on sales calls. But then also I want to do more like targeted outreach, just to like kind of queue up those calls. Because I've not had a problem getting like agency owners and such like on calls in the past, to talk to them. And I phrase it as like, discovery calls or as like research calls. But then usually it's like, I'm talking with them. I'm like, oh, you do that? Oh, that's interesting. I've seen people do this. And then we get like 10 minutes in, and then they're basically asking me about like how we do what we do. And then they're like, oh, that's interesting. Can we actually do like a sales call?
Yeah.
And I'm like, haha, you didn't know this was a sales call. This is the discovery call.
You're already on the sales call.
That's right. That's
like
right.
Scream. The calls
you're
coming
on the
from
first
inside
one.
the house.
Yeah. Happy to do another one to dive deeper, Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I have been just getting a lot more like focused in on like, it's just so much about like who the person is and how their process works, rather than like, trying to infer some intent from some like keyword search and that kind of thing. Like, which is something I've had to unlearn. I know you come from a different background, but like I come from an SEO content keyword background. And it's much harder. I'm just finding it's much harder to build a business off of that than saying like, all right, who is the person that you're going after? And then specifically going after them, it's really the psychographic like targeting. And I feel kind of stupid that it's taken me so long to really grok that, but I've also grokked it finally. So it's a step in the right direction.
I feel stupid about so many things. So
you and me both.
How are you going about having these conversations? I'll share like how we get these conversations to hone in on what is the right product, so we get to kind of product market fit. For us, it's like playing to our unfair advantage. We have growth hit, unqualified leads we can send to One Day Design. So that's literally been like what got us like 6 figures with this little product. Again, 6 figures in a year, not 6 figures a month. Sure. And very, very low 6 figures. And then the other thing is we are doing cold email outreach, and we're being extremely aggressive, where we're doing essentially a free CRO assessment for them that takes us a little bit of time. That has been fairly fruitful. And then we're just now standing up Google ads. And we'll see how that goes. Like, I know how much it costs me with Growth Hit to acquire someone with Google ads, and it is not cheap. And that LTV is much better than the LTV for One Day Design. So I'm a little bit nervous for that. And then I do a little bit of like content marketing myself that helps, but it's not like repeatable. But that's like what we're doing. Like, what's working what the best for you?
I mean, for us, it's still a lot of like referral and like people in the space. If I can get on webinars and podcasts and like that kind of thing and actually talk about what we're doing, then I just find that attracts the people that work in that way. Like if I get on and I talk about our best customers, our agencies that have a set editorial process and they're providing the subject matter expertise and the writer feedback, et cetera, in-house. And then they're relying on us for the finalization of it because they're scaled so much that their professional editors can no longer handle it. People are like, oh yeah, that's how we do it. Versus people that are like, no, I really need like a content manager. It's like, that's not an editor, So like, it's a great way to like attract and or repel attract the right fit, repel the wrong fit, which is what we should be doing, right? Like I'm a people pleaser, man. Just like personally, like I want people to be happy, but like I've also just had to realize that like if you're trying to serve everybody, you're not going to serve anybody. You're not going to serve anybody well. Yeah. So we have to be willing to say like, you know what, we're just not a good fit for that. I'm sorry. And maybe you can refer them to someone or something like that. Like, it just has to be done. SEO works pretty well for us. We get some good leads from SEO, from content. Some like Slack communities have been great for us. Like Superpath has been awesome for us.
Oh, nice.
It's because it's our ideal like audience. It's like you got freelancers, you got agency content people, you got in-house content people.
And are you in there? You in there just kind of being you and just adding value? And then people are like, oh, there's Sean. Oh, okay. That's Editor Ninja. Got it. Is that kind of the play there?
Kind of. Yeah. It's two things. I don't engage as much anymore with like people asking specific questions. If it's very like workflow, scale, et cetera, things, then I'm engaging. But if it's just like, I don't know, basic, like, how do I send a contract sort of question, like freelancer questions, I'm like, it's just not worth it because they're not our audience, they're not our ideal customer. So, but then also we do some advertising. I've done some targeted like advertising, like we get some sponsored like posts in Superpath that I pay for every month. I've sponsored some podcasts. Like I sponsored Kaylee Moore and Emma's freelance writer podcast a few months ago, started this year. And we got a number of customers off of that. So like that kind of thing tends to work best, just like super targeted and super like expertise driven. Has worked well for us. So
I need to try the podcast advertising. That's a great idea. Okay, so let's talk about kind of two last things I wanted to hit on. One is what are you doing going forward to like the perfect situation of like, how do you kind of get to that state where like, wow, you're feeling good about what you have and you're ready to scale because you're at product market fit? And then second, like, what does that look like when you're at that phase and like for the business when you hit product market fit?
What I'm doing to get there is, basically what I've already been doing. It's a lot of like talking to customers, talking to prospects, looking at the data of like, why did people churn and what kind of company were they? And what do the people that churned have in common? And what do the people that didn't churn have in common? And then basically saying, all right, everyone, people that are getting like results from us, what do they have in common? And then where are those people hanging out? And then how do I get in front of them? Whether it's a podcast sponsorship or being a part of a Slack community or getting on a podcast or getting a guest post or whatever. Like, I don't really care the channel, the medium. It's just like, how do I get in front of that specific audience? And then I don't really know what it looks like when you hit product market fit. But I do know that like a lot of that is then just going to be all about the team. It's about like I'm not involved in the day-to-day delivery of work at this point. I do account management. So like, that's going to be a key role for me to hire, because I am not a great account manager. And then basically I'm going to have someone that's responsible for hiring editors, because then that becomes the bottleneck, right? Like if I can't get the editors, I can't sign on customers, for the editors. So that's going to be a big one. And then eventually at some point I'll offload marketing and sales. I'm actually going to offload marketing first, and then I'll offload sales. But so I'll, and at some point in there, I'll probably slot in, like, if we have enough lead flow, I'll slot in like a sales development person kind of doing the qualifying. And then I'll basically play the account executive, like closer role, for a while. And then, either upgrade that SDR to a closer or hire a closer, to handle all of that. And then I can focus on like, building the business and the operations and the product and all that stuff. Cause that's stuff that I love to do. And right now I'm doing a lot of roles, but like, I think once you kind of hit that fit, then it becomes all about the team and who's responsible for actually doing the fulfillment. And then you can focus on building the business.
Yeah.
How are you thinking about it?
We're on the same page. For me, it's like, I've got to figure out the product and the persona that does two things. One, it makes the client happy, where they're like, this is exactly what I wanted. And the value exchange feels like this is a no-brainer. I'll keep this for a very long time. So then on the P&L, we have recurring revenue, because I know we can close stuff, but I want to close long-term things. If not, then I don't think this business works for like the goals that I have, unless we really unless we really uncover a customer acquisition machine that's super cost effective. And so that, for me, that's getting on a lot of phone calls. I have like 4 today, just trying to get after it. And then let's say it starts to work. Oh my gosh. Then the first thing that I want to do is actually unload sales, because I'm still sales for Growth Hit. I'm basically like a dancing monkey at this point for Growth Hit and One Day Design. And so,
so which service are we talking about today?
Yeah. What am I selling you? What hat do I put on?
That's right. Changing my shirt real quick.
let me change my blazer. And so like the thing that I like about One Day Design compared to Growth Hit is a strategic sell. It's like really getting into strategy. One Day Design should be very much a transaction-based sell, where it's very black and white. It's almost a menu. And so that's what I want to do. I do still want to be very much involved in the marketing of it. We have the fulfillment, everything done, but I really want to put my foot on the gas with it to scale, because there's some good and bad things about Growth Hit, but One Day Design is kind of taking all the bad from Growth Hit and making it good, in that it's like, I'm not selling myself. I'm selling like a true service. It's more scalable. And so that's what I'm interested to see if we can really pull off. But I've got a question for you. Like, do you ever think about like, this is working, but not working it the way I want? I need to pull the plug, because sometimes I see a lot of people that are really smart and sharp go after a good idea at the opportunity cost of maybe something great. And this is something where I'm like, okay, this is working, but I'm thinking about being as aggressive as putting a line in the sand with time to be at this date. If we don't hit this, then I think we would still have it, but it'd always be like a downsell from Growth Hit. And then I could take our team and focus on other things. I'm not sure like how aggressive I want to go there, but I just see too many startups and smart people just kind of flail for too long. And the opportunity cost is really great. Like, I don't know if you ever go to a dark place where you have those thoughts or conversations with yourself, because I do.
I have for sure. Done it a lot more with Credo over the years. But I think there's a few things there. I think number one is, I wouldn't, just me personally, just the way my psychology works, is I wouldn't shut down a service that's like kind of working, that like I'm also smart and I can like get it
Sell
to
it.
better, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I could sell it too, but like can get it to better. I wouldn't like sell something or close it down without knowing without having some sort of signal that something else might be better.
Yeah.
So if you see me starting up other businesses, that means I'm looking. Like I'm not starting up other businesses right now. And then also part of it is just like, like for you, I mean, you've got growth hit and y'all are doing what, 2-3 million a year, something like that. I think I see. So, the question is like, is it worth it to like, for you to spend all this like bandwidth and time on One Day Design, which is doing, 100K a year when you literally have a 20 to 30X, like, business already going that potentially has a bigger opportunity? It's a good question for you. For me, my situation's different. Like I've got more time. I've got a longer time horizon. I don't have a business doing $2-3 million a year that I'm working on as well. So, I can futz around, right? And I can make it work. Like, yeah, at some point, I gotta pay myself and all that. Like, and that's one of the current challenges. Like, I haven't taken a dime out of Editor Ninja. Like I've not paid myself from that business. I've got other things going on that, we're good. But at some point it does need to be a sustainable business that pays me, like pay yourself first. And then from there, you can only really say a business is profitable if you're paying yourself like, a market rate, like salary. And then like, you're not starving yourself in order to like hire other people.
Yeah.
So, I think that's more where my brain goes. Like I'm committed to Editor Ninja at this point, and I think it can be, quite big. Are we going to hit my goal of being at 1 million ARR by the end of this year? Almost definitely not. But like, if I aim for 1 million and we hit 600, 500, is that a win? Yeah, like for sure. And then like, that also means we're on a good trajectory to then hit that goal. It's kind of the million ARR by end of the year is kind of a BHAG. And if we get ourselves 60, 70% of the way there, I'm going to be super jazzed. We're currently like 20% of the way there. So like we've got work to do, but we also have half of the year left. So
yeah. And like, I'm a big fan of the book Built to Sell, and like the way you're setting up Editor Ninja is just like straight from that book. Because when I was reading that book, I was like, oh wow, I did everything wrong with Growth Ed. It's like, let me try to do it well with One Day Design. But no, that's no man, that's super helpful. And I think you bring up so many good points there around like, it's funny, like whenever you have a business, it's like, I don't even like, a lot of times it's like, not even thinking about pulling the money out. Because when you take the money, you just want to invest it back in because it's just a big game. You know what I mean? It's a fun game to play as you're trying to build and grow this and scale it.
It is. Yeah. And there's definitely a fine line there, and like I've never, like any business I've run, I've never taken like all the profit, out of the business. Like I'm always reinvesting.
Yeah.
Though there is some point where like, you hit where you're like, okay, I'm reinvesting this, but I'm not getting the growth that I need. So it might actually make more sense for like to go and like rethink what I'm investing in to things that will give me the return. But like short term, maybe you do take some of that money out, right? And you feel better about the business because you just dropped 50K in your bank account, like there is something to that, I think. So the other book I would say, like I love Built to Sell, but then the other one that's been really effective for me, and I may have mentioned it last time I was on, like just in building profitable companies, is Simple Numbers, Straight Talk, Big Profits by Greg Crabtree.
I think I read that after you told me, and that book. Sorry, go ahead. It is up there. Please read it.
Just the simple, like, and I'm starting to do this. I haven't done it. I kind of forgot about it, to be totally honest with you. But like what I'm starting to do is like every week I go and I'm like, all right, how much money did we collect this week? Right. That we kept, right? Like outside of refunds. So we don't have refunds often, but like I would take that out and then I'm taking a percentage of that. Crabtree talks about, I think he says 2%. I think I'm doing like 5% and I transfer that into a profit account.
Nice,
and so like we make $1,000 in a week, then I'm putting $50 into the account, and it just kind of scales up from there.
Yeah.
And then that is what I pay myself starting off until we get to the point where I can pay myself a salary. So you always have something. You're forcing yourself to be profitable because you can't spend the money that you don't have there in the checking account. It's literally in a separate account. But that book has been really helpful for me. I go back, dude, I reread that thing. Like I'm all about studying books, not just reading books. Like I go back and reread that book probably 3 times a year. Because I'm like, oh shoot, I forgot about that. I wasn't ready for it. And I did this, and now we've gotten here, and then now I'm ready for the next step. So I think there's something to studying books like that.
I am so on that page because I would read books, and then someone would ask me 2 years later, "Did you read that book?" I'd be like, "I think I did," and I didn't retain anything. And then I'm like, okay, I need to, these books that I really liked, I need to go deeper on. So I've been doing the exact same thing. I was even rereading the 4-Hour Workweek a couple times, and like, it just hits you in different ways at different phases of your life. And it's so interesting to read it when you're at a different stage, because you intake it a little bit differently, which is kind of fun. But yeah, in that book that you mentioned, they talk about like the black hole of death for businesses when you're like over 20 people and between 1 to 5 million in sales, and how that's where most companies go to die. And I was like, oh my goodness, yes, that is very true. But
and it's also nice to know that that's coming up, right? Hopefully. And then you kind of like, and then when it gets there, you're not surprised, and you're like, all right, I know, like I wasn't ready for that. So like I read the chapter ish, but now I'm going to go study the chapter.
Right.
Like, all right, you said I'd get here. Now what do I do?
Yeah, hear the growing pains. Yeah,
that's right.
But to your point on like growth hack versus one day design, it's funny. Like I'll be on a sales call for growth hack, we'll close the client, but then I'll be on a sales call for one day design, we'll close the client, and it's literally like $1,000, and I'm more excited for that than closing some like big growth hack client, because it's like, it's more of like selling a product than me dancing and having to execute the work. So yeah,
that's right.
But, well, dude, John, what else did we hit on with product market fit struggles? Hopefully this is helpful for people that are like trying to do their own thing, and it's not just all rainbows and sunshine trying to freaking figure this out.
Yeah, no, I think just like, end of the day, the man who loves walking is going to go further than the man who's looking for the destination. Like you just mentioned it, like business is a game. I'm learning to enjoy the game and learning to enjoy the ride. And a lot of it too is just like when I get into those, like I should just shut it down. Like there's two things to that actually, because I've been through that many times. First, I remember that is actually an option, because once I start feeling stuck, that's when I get into a bad place. So I'm like, you know what? It is actually an option. I could go into Kinsta and delete the website. I could do that. I can. It is a viable option, right?
Yeah.
But before I do that, I'm going on a walk.
Yeah.
And I'm getting space. And dude, they're like last week, we're recording this on the 15th. Last week is the hardest week I had in business in probably 3 years.
Oh man.
It was hard. Just like a lot of churn and just like customer stuff. And like, it was wild. And I was like, and I got to the end of each day, and I was like, I'm just taking the L, taking the loss today. I got to the end of the week, and I was like, I'm just taking the loss on the week. And then I came back on Monday, and this has been a good week.
Yeah.
So some of it too is just saying like, this too shall pass, right? And if you're going through hell, keep on going, because hell is a stop on the way to heaven, right? Like just whatever cliche it like that helps you. All of those help me. Whatever cliche like that helps you, lean into that. And the only way you fail is if you quit.
Yeah, I bet what you learned in that week, most people would probably learn in like a year, because like you accelerate your learning and your knowledge real quick when you're taking something to market and getting feedback and whatnot.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it also wasn't my first week of like, hard things like that happening. Like I've been on my own for almost 8 years now. Like I've had a lot of weeks like that, and like it feel like the first time you go on a roller coaster, it feels like crazy, right? Like you've never been on a roller coaster before. You've never felt it. Like you just don't know what to expect. But after you've been on a bunch of them and you've gone through some loops and, all of that, it's like, all right, I know I'm going to be good. This is fun, not terrifying. And, you get off, you're like, cool, what's next? The other metaphor I like to use is building a business is like surfing. Like at first you suck and you're falling all over the place.
Yeah.
Then you get better and you're riding some smaller waves, and then you can surf some bigger stuff. But then sometimes that bigger stuff just like eats you alive and you get flipped over, you get barreled, right? It's just kind of how it goes, but at this point, like we're just riding waves. So we're on just like roller coasters that occasionally there are big spikes, occasionally there are big drops, but like it's just a roller coaster and just have fun with it.
Right. It's all about your tolerance for pain at some point, not to compare us to Navy SEALs, but we'll just go down that path for a second. He was on the podcast, Pat Dossett. Whenever he was doing like the SEAL week intense training, he was like, you would line people up and he's like, the people you thought would make it, they all dropped off. The people that were like physical specimens, he's like, the people that made it weren't very impressive, but what you learned beneath them was like their tolerance for pain was just higher than everyone else. And it's funny because like my wife works at Amazon and she definitely has like issues she goes through, but it's like I don't know. She's like, you become numb to some of the stuff because you've seen so many highs and lows. I'm like,
Yep.
yeah, I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but it's true.
Yep. No, I agree, man. It's just all about that. I mean, this is why, mindset's the most important thing, right? How you're approaching it, how you think about it, how you manage your own psychology as you go through these things. It's just and unfortunately, like, at least for me, I have to learn it through taking those knocks, but it also makes us hard. So,
Yeah.
there's not much that phases me in business anymore.
Yeah. Well, dude, John, this was awesome, man. Thank you so much for coming on. We'll have to do another check-in as we keep kind of pushing these projects along, but it's
Let's
pretty
do
cool.
it, man. Sounds good. Thanks for having me on, man. Good to see you again.
You too.
All right.